Do you think there is that kind of strange social divide between parents and children, or maybe even grandparents and children, whereby you almost don't see each other as contemporaries because you have this, I suppose, this the generational gap in between that means that you feel when you're growing up like you can't connect that way. Do you reckon that's what it is?
Actually, that's one of the insights that's come up as I've been speaking to people, and I was sort of piloting and testing me and my old man. One of the sons had said to me, his theory was that he'd now got to a stage where he had three kids. He's sort of middle-aged, 40 odd. And he said, it's for the first time in my life, well, at this point now, I've actually caught up to my parents, and we're now peers. We're now contemporaries, just like you said.
Yeah.
And it's not until that point, they're always your dad. They're always an older person, not an older person, but they're a parental figure. They're not someone you want to ask those questions to. You reject them as a teenager. You go off when you're in your 20s and do whatever you want. You don't want to know, when you have kids, you don't really want to get their advice so much. But it does start to seep in as you think, actually, they were a parent. They were like I was, with this, busy life. So maybe I should ask them more questions.
Kind of makes sense, and I think generationally, you're right. Things have shifted, haven't they? If I look at my grandfather and my dad, Dad always used to say that there was, especially you see his grandfathers very often maybe were involved in wartime or extreme austerity. That it just wasn't the done thing. They people that even didn't talk amongst
Yeah.
themselves in society. So the chance of them speaking to their children who were kind of blooming into a new generation was never going to happen. But it feels like the generations through, I suppose, social media and just society in general have begun to squeeze down a little bit now. So do you think that people are talking more and more to each other, especially, I suppose, as children kind of blossom from teenagehood into adulthood, that there is that little bit more of a symbiosis between the two generations?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing is that, I'm dealing with adult children, so talking 30 years old, 40 years old. So they're millennials, right? So they're part of the first generation, I think, that they've been encouraged to express themselves a bit more. Therapy is something we can talk about. Do you have a therapist? That's something a 35-year-old man could ask to another 35-year-old man. That wouldn't have happened 50 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
So we as this group are more used to that. But as you say, the baby boomers ahead of us, if we're talking about these two generations, are totally not used to that. And something that's really interesting is that if I can catch a child who is open to those kinds of conversations and maybe just wants to know a bit more, but their parent who's 60, 70, 80 isn't used to it, and they've said to me, so one this morning said, I don't really like talking about myself that much, so I was a bit reluctant to do this.
Right.
And this was in the fifth hour of talking to him about his life. Given the space, like, people want to share something with people they care about. It's not that he said to me, I'm not the guy around the dinner table who's talking about myself. I actually, I don't really like those kinds of people. But when his son and daughter asked me to do this with them, he opened up, and it was just beautiful. It was lovely.